Right, welcome everybody. Thank you so much for joining us and for attending our webinar about our project funding for 2025 for the summer. So we're delighted that so many of you could make it. My name's Tanya and this is my colleague Kat. So this webinar is aimed at organisations who are looking to apply for funding from EOCA this month to explain the application process, what we're looking for in a project, and then for you to have the opportunity to ask us some questions about that process or about your project in particular. So we very much hope that you find it a useful event. As I hope you will have noticed, we are recording this so that we can put it up on our website at the end of the session, and it may well display your names, or most of you just seem to have your initials there. So if that upsets you in any way, then please can you leave now? But if you're happy with that, then obviously we shall continue, and thank you for staying with us. So if you have questions, please can you wait until the end of this presentation? It'll take about 20 minutes, but you could start recording questions if you'd like to in the chat, not in the Q&A. We'll just look at the chat at the end of this presentation, and then we'll take each question one by one. And we will aim to finish our presentation at 3 o'clock, so in just within an hour. Okay. Moving on. Yep, there we go. Moving on. So by way of quick introduction to EOKA, we are the European Outdoor Conservation Association, and we are made up of just over 130 organisations. So these organisations help us raise funds for the conservation projects that we fund. So you can see the various different members that are listed here. So we raise funds, like I said before, through our membership fees and other fundraising activities and donations. Since the association started in 2006, we have raised and committed over 5.8 million euros to 214 projects in 65 countries around the world. So EOKA funds a broad range of conservation projects in non-urban wild landscapes. This obviously also includes marine landscapes and environments. All the projects that we fund must conserve and restore threatened ecosystems and habitats, mitigating against climate change and the loss of biodiversity, and must also involve a large element of reconnecting people with nature. We'll go into both of these in more detail shortly. Have you moved on?
I think so. Yeah. So what does our funding application process look like, and what are the timings? We have 2 funding rounds every year, usually in June and November. And just to give you an idea of numbers, we typically receive over 200 applications each funding round and are then able to fund 5 or 6 projects. You should keep an eye on our website and social media for details of exact timings and what we're looking for each round, as these can vary. We're open to applications from non-profit organisations carrying out work anywhere in the world except the USA and Canada. That's because there's an organisation similar to us called the Conservation Alliance that does similar work. You as an organisation can be based in the USA or Canada. It's just that the work you're doing must be located elsewhere. You can apply for up to 30,000 for a project, and projects tend to last 1 to 2 years. Sorry, there we go. As I said, we have 2 funding rounds each year, and each funding round lasts around 5 to 6 months from application to funding then becoming available. The timings may vary each year dependent on the number of applications we receive and other events being organised by EOCA, but this will be communicated each time. For this next funding round, we're open now for projects starting this coming autumn. We will close to applications at 12 noon British summertime, 1300 Central European summertime, on Monday the 30th of June, which is the last working day of the month. So please don't leave your application to last minute, because we're not going to be in the office over the weekend to answer any last minute questions. And please also note that we don't accept any applications after the deadline, no matter the reason. We then aim to go through all applications to assess them against our funding criteria and to create a shortlist by the end of September, beginning of October, depending on the number of applications we receive. We will hold online votes in late October to select which projects on the shortlist will receive funding, and we will talk a bit more about the voting later on. Funding will then become available November or December for the successful projects. Our funding criteria have been updated this round, and we're going to go through that shortly. But first, as a quick outline of the extra documentation we require with your application, all of which is listed at the start of the application form. First is a predicted project impact table, which can be downloaded alongside the application form from our website on the Apply for Funding page, as you can see on the slide here. We also need a budget and 2 references from organisations that have funded or worked with you in the past. We will accept one of these references as a character reference for the lead coordinator of the project. We also need it as an actual written reference, not just the names and email addresses. We also ask for a timeline of the project and a document showing proof that your organisation is not for profit. You're also welcome to send in a few pictures or a short video to help us visualise the project area, the habitat you're working in, and the work you propose to do. A couple of other things to be aware of. For our due diligence checks, we do require that you have an online presence, so a website and social media accounts. Our application form also asks you to list 2 past successes. Please do make sure that these past successes are relevant to the work you're proposing in your application, to demonstrate to us any relevant experience you have in the area of work you're planning. So now on to our funding criteria. Each project will be scored based on these, and from that we will create a short list of 10 to 12 projects which best meet them. Tanya will now start to take you through these funding criteria.
Okay, so EOCA's project grants are guided by the latest scientific evidence and support NGOs and projects practicing a rights-based approach to conserving and restoring ecosystems. In December 2024, the Intergovernmental Platform on Biodiversity and Ecosystem Services, IPBES, published the assessment report on the interlinkages among biodiversity, water, food and health, known as the Nexus report. So presenting over 70 response options and 10 categories of action, EOCA's focusing its granting on 2 areas: conserve ecosystems and restore ecosystems. So your project should fall within one or more of these 11 response systems listed here. In addition, all projects that EOCA supports must work to reconnect people with nature and use rights-based approaches in decision making. So moving on to the specific criteria, we're now dividing the scores into 2 areas of work. So out of a total of 60, this first area, can get a maximum of 30 points, so it's worth half the score. And it is to conserve and or restore threatened key species, habitats or broader ecosystems in wild areas, whilst helping mitigate climate change and biodiversity loss. So please note, EOCA defines wild areas as non-urban environments and ecosystems occurring in as natural a state as possible, given the area's location and use. So projects must address specific issues and root causes. What are the identified threats to the species or the habitat or the ecosystem? What are the impacts of these threats, and how are these threats going to be eliminated, alleviated, or better managed? Projects must include practical hands-on work. This includes activities such as habitat restoration, removal of invasive species, anti-poaching measures, re-wetting bogs or peatland, removing plastic pollution, coral reef restoration, etc. Research, planning, engagement meetings, data collection, information campaigns are all very, very important elements of a project, but they're not what we think of as hands-on conservation work. These elements can definitely be included as part of a project, but a significant amount of our funding must be for the hands-on element of the project. And that means getting your hands dirty. So secondly, the project must reconnect people with nature. And this section covers a maximum of 20 out of the 60 points I mentioned earlier. The outdoor community where we get our funding from plays a key role in enabling people to get outdoors and experience wild places and build a connection with the natural world. This increase in nature connection is absolutely vital for the whole of society, as the underlying causes of biodiversity loss, identified in the Nexus report that I mentioned earlier, are the disconnection of people from nature and domination over nature and other people.
So, as part of this connection with nature, all projects must firstly work towards restoring and fostering a deep connection between people and nature, including deepening the understanding and appreciation of nature to the benefit of human health, well-being, and the natural world. This could include anything from getting people involved in project actions to organised nature walks or bike treks. We are all more likely to want to conserve and look after what we have seen and experienced. So encouraging people, local communities and visitors to reconnect with nature is paramount to future conservation successes. Secondly, projects must use rights-based approaches, applying human rights principles to conservation and other measures, and accounting for the rights of nature and the rights of non-human entities, including recognising the rights of Indigenous peoples, local communities, and women. Such rights may include, but are not limited to, land and territories, water, food, health, and a safe and clean environment. If there are Indigenous communities in the project area, we need to know how they're going to be involved in the design and implementation of the project and how their needs are being met. And related to all this, thirdly, the project must ensure local people are fully engaged. If local communities and also communities of interest are not involved, they may not feel any need or desire to ensure that the good work that's been started continues into the future. Obviously, if specialist work needs to be carried out, relevant experts may need to be brought in, but wherever possible, projects must involve the local community, giving them ownership of the project and its outcomes, and contributing to their livelihoods during and after the project. So tell us how your project will benefit those communities, encourage stewardship of local landscapes, help tackle poverty and support local ecosystem services, such as providing clean water or preventing erosion, flooding or wildfires, and providing a safer, healthier environment for communities to live in. We look for organisations that have already got a good relationship and support within communities in their project area. Now, although all projects we fund must involve and engage with the local community, please remember that projects must still be primarily conservation projects rather than social projects. So, for example, we will not fund projects addressing issues such as setting up waste management systems or agricultural projects. Finally, a project also needs to have educational and communicational elements. So tell us if you are providing education and raising awareness about the importance of the species or habitat you are working to conserve. Do you need to communicate responsible ways for the future sustainable management and public use of the area, or highlight negative impacts of certain actions and how to do things differently? Maybe teaching skills that will help develop new alternative livelihoods is a vital part of the project.
So those are the main criteria that we will be scoring projects on. Just a couple of other things to highlight. 5 points for each. So the positive legacy is the first one. We look for all projects leaving a positive legacy in the area where it's taking place. So what will happen when EOCA funding has finished? The beneficial effects of the project should be sustained beyond the duration of the funding. It's not about rushing in, throwing money at a problem and dashing back out again. What processes will be set up to ensure that the work that has been started will continue to be monitored and managed in the long term? How will the project benefit the livelihoods of the local people and the local economy, both during and after the project? And finally, and for the final 5 points, a word about objectives. So the work that you're going to carry out must demonstrate clear and measurable impacts over its duration. What indicators can be measured to evidence the impact that you are going to have? For example, if you're restoring an area, how will you measure its success? If anti-poaching measures are being used, how will you assess their effectiveness? Our application asks for 3 measurable and time-orientated objectives. These are vital because we look at these to get an overall summary of what you're trying to achieve through the work that you want to do. And if your project goes on to receive a grant from EOCA, each time you send us a report as the project progresses, we will look at them to see how far you have come in achieving what you set out to do. So this means we need numbers and dates. For example, we will run 3 training events with 6 women's groups on caring for tree seedlings during March, April and May. Or 300,000 native seedlings will be planted over an area of 200 hectares of degraded land from June to September of both years of the project, involving 200 local community members. Examples of objectives that are not measurable are raise awareness of climate change amongst visitors, or we will patrol the area to increase protection against poaching. Neither of these says how it's going to be achieved, how you'll know whether or not it's been successful, or when it's going to happen. So once we've scored all of our projects, we create a shortlist of these that best meet our criteria. We have a panel of scientific advisors who we ask to review our decisions at this point. They are all experts in different fields of conservation and provide really valuable advice, comment and additional questions to us. This may also therefore mean that we might come back to you at this stage to ask more about certain aspects of your project. So please do give us as much detail as you possibly can, as it could make the difference between a place on the shortlist or not.
Okay, once we have a confirmed shortlist of projects, the projects that will receive funding are selected in 3 ways: a public vote, a members' vote, and then potentially by individual members. During the public vote, each project in the shortlist is presented online, and the general public and the project supporters can go onto our website and vote for their favourite projects. The public vote is 2 weeks of relatively hard work for the organisations involved in the vote, and we do really appreciate the effort that's put into it. But the vast majority of projects we work with in this way, even those that don't gain funding, come back to us saying how useful and worthwhile it is. It helps to raise the profile of organisations, can gain more support locally and further afield, as well as highlighting the particular conservation issue being tackled. It's also nice to be able to ask supporters for a vote rather than money. Over the years, our vote has attracted the support of a UK politician, the President of Costa Rica, Miss Nepal, and also even David Attenborough. We have been astounded by the tens of thousands of votes we've received, as well as the millions of people that have been reached during the voting process in the past. After this public vote, the projects with the most votes will gain funding, and the remaining projects will be put into a vote for EOCA members. This is a private vote and will enable our members to select further projects to fund. After this, the remaining shortlist will be sent to all EOCA members to see if any of them are interested in supporting or part funding any of the projects themselves through EOCA. Those projects that are selected, we release funding in 3 stages. 50% once contracts are in place, 30% after approval of an interim report, and then the final 20% on full completion of the project. So finally, some top tips. Firstly, before you fill in your application, please be aware that because we receive so many applications, yours won't progress if it doesn't fit our criteria. And 2 of the most crucial parts of the application form is your project overview and project objectives. When we receive so many applications, we use these 2 questions in our initial sifting and select projects we will then read in full. Make sure you grab our attention in your application. How does yours stand out from others? Make your title short and to the point. Or
I will reduce it.
Shorten it for you. Describe clearly the habitat and species and the actions you plan to take to protect and restore them. Tell us about the local community and nature connections you're planning. Send in a few photos to illustrate your points, and short videos are also great to showcase your project. Remember to send in all the documents, and please stick to the word count. We are a very small team and we only have a finite amount of time to assess all the applications we receive. We very much appreciate project applications that are succinct and clearly laid out. So that's pretty much it. Thank you all very much for taking the time to listen today. We're now going to open up to questions, but as Tanya said at the start, please only put these in the chat function so that we don't miss any, and not in the Q&A, just the chat function. And we will endeavour to work through them in order.
Yeah.
As Tanya also said, this meeting is going to close at 3 o'clock. So if we don't get to your question, please email us and we will endeavour to answer emails as soon as possible. And our email address is down there, info@eokaconservation.org. So just give us a second while we quit out of the presentation and get to the chat function. Right, we're going to go from the start. So let's see.
A few AI assistants taking part. Oh, quite a lot.
Somebody's asked in Spanish. I think that is about translation.
Sorry, it's all in English. I'm very, very sorry. But if you wanted to send us some questions specifically, if the English has been too difficult, then please send us something on the info@ email address.
Okay, we're going through quite a few on AI assistance as well, so might take us a while to get to some questions.
So I've got to one asking about sterilisation and vaccination project for feral dogs. Would it count as hands-on? I guess it would. We've not funded any vaccination, sterilisation programmes so far, have we?
No, you'd need to give us a good outline as to the reasons why and what you're hoping for it to achieve, and particularly whether it's had any success so far. It would certainly be one that we would be asking our scientific advisors for advice on, because there are quite a number of different issues with that.
The thing keeps moving, and then I'm not sure whether or not I've seen it. We just follow your question.
We're planning to work intensively with the local community, do the workshops together, etc. Is it an eligible cost to ensure that they get paid for the work that they do? Yes, it is. We do say on quite a few things that we don't pay for salaries. That's basically your running salary costs of your organisation we won't pay for. But if you are employing someone specifically for the project that's carrying out specific project actions, such as this, in doing the workshops, or somebody overseeing things that's specifically to this project, we will fund that.
Then that's
you
fine.
can ask for that.
Yeah. Oh, I saw one from the leads there.
It just jumped.
Exactly, that's what kept happening to me.
Sorry, our chat function is jumping around. I think that's that one. Okay, in other words, can we transfer some of the budget to the small local
Yes, that's the one we've answered.
Yes, so that's
Next
that
is
one.
leads. We will be applying for funding for part of a self-contained project that operates across several sites. In terms of the application, oh, it's just jumped again. Why does it do that? Was that it?
Yeah,
Yeah.
so, yeah.
In terms of the application form questions related to organisation size, would you require the details for the whole university or the smaller project group? I'd have said the smaller project group.
We want to see the smaller project group. One of the difficulties that universities can have in applying is when you give us just your university website, it's really hard for us to do our due diligence and see what work you are doing. So if you are able to supply a more localized site as to what you're doing and the specific projects, that definitely helps in our assessing the project and getting an idea of what work you've done and are proposing to do.
Additionally, the project I'll be applying for is currently operating and will continue to operate beyond the timescale of the potential funding. With regards to the project timeline element of the application, do you require the entire project timeline or just for the time that the funding would be used?
Unfortunately, it's good to have both. Being a bit demanding, but it's nice to see that longevity.
Yes,
it's for the legacy to see what you're planning in the future. But yes, we do also need to see specifically what EOCA is doing in that time.
Yeah, it wouldn't need to be too detailed on beyond the funding, but if it would be nice to see that that is what you're going to be doing once the funding from EOCA has finished. A Healed World was previously funded under a US aid project managed by ABT Global. The project was prematurely terminated due to a US executive decision. Given this context, would a recommendation letter from ABT Global, our direct implementing partner, describing the nature of our collaboration and performance during the funding period be acceptable as one of the two required reference letters? Yes, that would be absolutely fine. Yes.
Do we aim for a particular number of shortlisted applications, or does it depend on the scores received? It does very much depend on the scores, and if we get quite a lot of high scoring projects, then we will be reducing it on what is the highest scoring. I think hopefully that answers that question. But yeah, it does all depend on the scores that we allocate to projects, and also their scientific advisors' input.
Yes, yeah, definitely. Alejandro from Ecuador, hello. What items can the fund finance?
Counterparts that must be submitted. Not entirely sure what you're meaning by that. You might want to elaborate on what is it that you're thinking about items wise.
Yeah.
Pretty much anything that's involved in conservation project actions that are relevant to all that we've just mentioned and discussed today in our funding criteria, that's all applicable to funding. If there's something more specific you're wanting to ask about, either ask in this chat or send us an email.
Yes, I mean, we don't need everything down to that absolute last cent. So we don't need to know how many biscuits you're going to eat when you're out replanting trees. But an overall, this day that we are going out to plant trees is going to cost us X amount in transport, X amount in feeding volunteers, that kind of thing, and X amount in new tools or something.
Do you know what that means? Got another Spanish one. My Spanish is not.
No, I'm afraid I don't know that.
No, that's country. Receive our.
Oh, sorry, Ramon Diego. I'm afraid we don't understand your. Oh, hang on, we've got a translate button. Hello.
No, it's still that. Do you? No, is it that one?
No, it's this one here. Colke receives
support. Zambia is a country.
Sorry.
Message us again.
Yes, try that one again, please, Ramon. Do we accept food forest applications?
If you're meaning orchards and that type of thing, does it go on there? Does it?
No,
it's different one. We will, but the main action needs to be conservation. So if if all you're doing is setting up an orchard for feeding communities, then that's not really something that we would look to fund. The primary thing must be some sort of conservation goal. If you're doing native woodlands alongside orchards to provide food for communities, then yes, we would be interested in that.
Does the project have to be completely brand new, or can the funding go to levelling up a part that will be vital for the project's continuing success? Absolutely. If you're already working on something, definitely we will fund something that is continuing. No, it doesn't need to be brand new.
Okay, next one. Would a project primarily focused on tagging or tracking of individuals of a threatened species in order to better diagnose the causes for decline, alongside wider social science elements and community engagement, align sufficiently as hands-on conservation of a species? That's very iffy, I'm afraid. That's more into research. Some of that could be allocated if you were also then doing other hands-on conservation work with it. So we have in the past had organisations, one I can think of off my head is in elephants, and they've done elephant tracking, and they've been using that to enable protecting of local communities from crops getting trampled. So then they are putting in some mitigating measures to prevent that.
As a result.
So, but they are monitoring the moving of those animals at the same time, and that would be applicable.
Yeah. Our proposed project involves restoring degraded areas of the Abutia Forest Reserve through native species reforestation, community-led nurseries, biodiversity monitoring, and camera traps. We aim to build climate resilience through sustainable agroforestry. Would a project like this, with both habitat restoration and community empowerment components, align well with the EOKA's current funding priorities? Yes, absolutely. Yes, all of that would be fabulous to see in a project.
Like somebody from Colombia, Paula Alexandra, you'd like to know more about the critic grant? Where can I find the proposal letter template?
So do you mean the application form? So how you would find the application form? That is on our website on the project funding. So if you go onto our website and click on projects, there's a section that says apply for funding. And if you click onto that, the template that you need to fill in to apply for funding is on that page.
Okay, next question from Zelena. Regarding the requirement, projects must include hands-on practical work such as habitat restoration. Is it eligible that we put pressure on the relevant institutions that are responsible for managing the protected area we will target in the proposal? In other words, can our practical hands-on work be ensuring by various means that the responsible institutions do the actual restoration of the park work? Unfortunately not. That doesn't really, that's kind of more lobbying side than hands-on. We would need to see some practical hands-on doing some conservation work, I'm afraid.
Yeah. So, and that could be part of your project, but it mustn't be all of the project. Hello, EOCA team. In the voting system criteria, can you fund projects from the same geographical region or country, or do you consider funding projects from different geographical regions? So are you talking about applying for funding in more than one country at the same time? I'm not quite sure I understand that question. Sorry.
So yeah, I think you're just meaning that with the voting, are we selecting different geographical areas when we do the vote, which is no. Yeah, as we said in the presentation, projects can be anywhere in the world apart from the USA and Canada, because there's another organisation that does work there. And then when we get the shortlist, the shortlist is the shortlist. It's not categorised by country.
Would forestry in England, specifically for the checkered skipper butterfly, count as a threatened enough ecosystem? If the checkered skipper butterfly is threatened, near threatened, then yes, absolutely, we would consider that.
Could an organisation apply if it has received previous funding from EOCA and successfully implemented it before? Yes, you can definitely reapply for funding.
As long as your project is now finished. Yeah.
Which, Raymond, I know yours has. Thank you. Hi, thank you so much for this. Would you consider funding a participatory governance project for a marine reserve on an inlet of the Balearic Islands in Spain? Yes. I think that's
Very hands-on indeed.
that's the short answer. Yes, we would.
Hi, Camilla from Chile. Can I apply with my project considering that the ecosystem we want to protect is a wetland located in an agricultural landscape, so is a rural zone but near to urban localities like towns? Yes, that would be fine as long as it's not directly inside a town. So if it's, a wetland area that still has, wildlife and a habitat worth saving, then yes.
Could you implement this project at the Terai area or only in hill area of Nepal? I'm not sure where the Terai area is, but as Tanya just said for the previous one, so long as it is a habitat that's not urban and not within the city, yes, you can.
Okay, Catalina, is it possible to apply as a consortium and provide the requested letters to demonstrate experience in the fields covered by this call? So as a consortium, we would want we would want to communicate with one specific organisation. So yes, you can apply as a consortium as long as there was a non-profit within that group that we could communicate with, and also obviously send funds to. So it can't just be a group of people. It needs to have a non-profit organisation as part of that.
Sorry, I just rejigged and I've gone and lost my place. Give us a second. Nope.
No, up.
There. Yes, we are going to share the PowerPoint. It will be up on our website to download.
Hang on, there was one here. Should the project start immediately after funding has been approved? It doesn't need to. Obviously, there's a bit of time once a project has been chosen for us to go backwards and forwards with contracts and get various information. But as long as it sort of starts within a few months after the project, the voting has finished, then that would be great.
Yeah, basically before, say, any funding in the next round would be starting. So if you're applying now for the autumn, you can have it starting in January or February the next year, because our next funding round wouldn't be funding in that time. So yes, it, as Tanya said, just needs to be sort of within it. Not if you're applying now and wanting to start next year, a full year ahead, then we'd be asking you to reapply next time round.
Yeah.
So yeah, the PowerPoint will be shared on our website on the Apply to Funding page at some point after this presentation. Just bear with us for a few days.
Yeah,
just get close to the weekend, and we'll get it sorted.
So since ecosystem restoration often requires a long time to show full impact, we understand that project may conclude with intermediate result. Therefore, well-defined and measurable intermediate outcomes are acceptable at the end of the project. Yes, absolutely. We understand that obviously when you're, for instance, reforesting, it might be that by the end of EOCA's funding, all you've managed to do is put the trees in the ground, and then you haven't seen the benefit of wildlife returning or anything like that. But obviously you can show us that was your objective, was to get those trees in the ground, and then your legacy and your long-term planning for after that will be maintaining and checking that those saplings are growing and sort of doing what you were hoping that they would do.
Okay, next question from Lex regarding enhancing ecotourism infrastructure related to protected areas. Would that fit the criteria or just conservation actions? Ecosystem infrastructure wouldn't fit conservation actions, but it would fit under reconnecting people with nature. So that would go under that side of it. We'd still need, of course, 30 points are allocated to the conservation actions, 20 points are allocated to reconnecting people with nature. So bear that in mind, that your project would still need to be doing hands-on conservation.
Yeah, so if something like building a bird hide at the end of a trail or something to encourage people to come and watch the birds that you're conserving would be absolutely fine. But the whole project couldn't be just building the bird hide. It would have to be, you know, as Kat said, you'd have to have the hands-on conservation as well.
And the more of the weight onto the hands-on conservation.
Yeah. Nepal, yes, absolutely, you're eligible to apply. We funded a number of projects in Nepal over the years. Oh, hang on,
No, that's just about,
okay.
We've just got some that are on record.
Okay, yes.
Getting notifications of record.
Oh, basic otter, never heard of it. Could an organisation apply with 2 different projects? Yes, you can apply with up to 3 projects, but obviously be aware it takes quite a lot of time to fill out an application form. EOCA, I'm really sorry, we can't send
the processes in Spanish. You will have this meeting, be able to download it, and if you have anybody that could translate it for you, then that would probably be the best way to do it. It's jumped again.
Yeah.
Technology.
Oh, keep going up. Oh, goodness. There. Can it be an NGO consortium? I think we've answered that question, haven't we?
Yeah, we have. Would the funding be eligible to support training of the local population to carry out and teach conservation work at our site? Yes. Specifically, our project focuses on advancing the diving skills of our already trained local divers, enabling them to become dive masters. This would allow them to train additional community members in coral restoration. Would this type of capacity building be considered an appropriate use of funds?
Yes. Absolutely, as long as there was the hands-on conservation and the coral restoration that was also part of the project.
Yeah.
Hello, Marouj from Iraq. It's written that no focus should be on religious groups. What if the area we're targeting is populated by a religious group? That's absolutely fine. It's more about sort of doing things in a very religious way. So if you're working in an area that is mainly Muslim or Christian or whatever, it doesn't matter that that's what the religion is of the area. It's all about the conservation at the end of the day.
Okay, Monica from Colombia. Do you fund projects with species in captivity due to illegal trafficking or relocation or animal welfare management? Unfortunately not. Not unless there was a big hands-on conservation element in the project. We don't tend to fund animals in captivity, I'm sorry.
Can the grant fund the purchase of a recently deforested pasture land and the planting of over 4,000 trees to restore an ecological corridor and wildlife migratory route linking 2 already protected areas of rainforest in Costa Rica? Yes, absolutely.
Short answer. Does this application require a letter of support from the local government? No, not unless you, in your area that you're working in, that you actually have to have permissions in place, but you can still apply. So I know for example, in Nepal, you can't actually apply for those permissions until you have granting in place. So what we have done with ones in Nepal in the past is that we have done contracts, but within that contract, it stipulates that funding won't be released until those permissions are in place. And that is sufficient for the organisation then to go to the government and say they've got this funding. Can we get the permissions? There we go.
Beth, would a former brownfield site, now a SSSI, count as being in as natural state as possible given its location and former use? Yes, absolutely. That would definitely fit our criteria. Thanks, Beth.
It would very much go under a restoration project.
Yeah.
So we will get areas of land that are, say, pretty much degraded beyond belief, but that you're going to be working on to conserve and restore it, and that's absolutely fine.
Well, especially if it's already in a SSSI. Is a school eligible to apply or only an NGO? That's an interesting question.
We've never had a school. We've had universities apply, but not a school if you're looking at primary school or secondary school.
Is a school non-profit?
And I'm not entirely sure. If your school is non-profit, then possibly you could apply. If you have an outline of what your project is, it might be best sending us an email with a paragraph as to what you're wanting to do, because we would also need to know that you have the expertise to do it.
Yes.
It's not something that we've funded before, a school doing it. So we'd need to know a fair bit of information. And yes, if it's non-profit, there's a possibility, but we'd need to know a bit more.
Perhaps you could email us separately and we could have a discussion about that. Yuri, do we have the process of applying for projects in Spanish? I'm afraid we don't. It's maybe something that we should look into in the future, just an outline. The problem is it keeps changing each application round. So I'm very sorry that we don't.
With a tropical rainforest reforestation project, this is Megan, would the area need to be accessible to the public and outdoor enthusiasts to be eligible for the grant? The main issue with that would be reconnecting people with nature. Under that heading, how are you going to encourage local communities and people in the area to sort of take ownership and look after the area that you're protecting? And if you're not allowing anybody on the site at all, then that might be difficult.
It tricky. Yeah. Hello, Neri. Oh, hello there. That wasn't a question. Hello, Nanchin from Nigeria. Would the restoration of a community forest be eligible? Part of the objective is to plant native vulnerable plant species. Yes, absolutely, and especially getting the community involved.
Do we accept applications from Afghanistan?
Yes,
we do.
Is it possible to engage with people from different countries, or should we focus on engaging with locals only? You can do both. So absolutely, if there's visitors to your area, then you can definitely engage with them, get them involved, and absolutely it needs to have local support, whatever it is you're doing. And is it okay to plan the project seasonally? Yes, absolutely. There are very specific times when you can and can't plant various different trees and plants. So yes, if it needs to be seasonal, that's absolutely fine.
And Sandra from Colombia, we've got another. So we've had a few requests to share it to actual email addresses. Unfortunately, we don't really have the time to go through and select email addresses to send to, but it will be available on the website, on the apply for funding page. It'll be just under where you would download the application form. There'll be a link there and you can download it yourself.
Yeah. Hi, EOCA team. We're a local conservation NGO, but have been offering courses to a local university under our conservation education programme. Recently, we ran out of funding. We have volunteer lecturer keeping the programme going, although we have to scale down staff. Programme is ongoing, but at a smaller scale in terms of field work and other students. Can we apply for funding for the continuation of a programme and also a wage for the volunteer lecturer tutor? That, I would say, very much depends on what hands-on conservation work is being done as part of that education programme. So yes, there could be, if it was done alongside some actual hands-on conservation work in the area or whatever area you were planning to be in. And if the tutor needed to be paid as part of doing that hands-on conservation work, then yes, he could.
Yeah.
Or she.
Okay, Ebba, does the money allocated from EOKA need to cover the whole project, or could it have complementary funding? Definitely can have complementary funding.
Yeah.
We get both situations.
Yeah.
So absolutely fine either way. Just be clear in your budget what funding you're requesting from EOKA and what is coming in from elsewhere.
I'm a solo person aiming to do a PhD on seagrass restoration. I plan to train people in the Mediterranean in free diving for conservation monitoring. I'm going to apply through an NGO called Project Manea. Is this type of project applicable? Sorry, the things just jumped again. So you as an individual person cannot apply for funding. However, the NGO that you're working with could apply on your behalf with you working with them.
You've also asked here about the references and whether they need to be from the NGO. I'd say in your circumstance, we'd want one as a character reference and one that's from the NGO who would be heading it and looking after you doing it.
Yeah. And if my project starts next spring, should I apply in autumn instead of now? So from here, you would be getting funding sort of November, December time.
Our November applications usually get funding in sort of May, June. So if you're looking at your project starting before May, June, then you should apply now.
Yeah.
Limo Kibet from Indigenous Network in Kenya, interested to do a project in Lake Baringo with threatened fish spawning habitats. Piscivores are really affected and most are migrating away from this fragile habitat. Birdwatchers reduced in these IBA sites. Are we eligible to apply for this, please? Yes,
Yeah.
yes, you are indeed.
As long as you're a registered non-profit.
Yeah.
Hi, I'm currently developing a conservation proposal focused on restoration of freshwater ecosystems and engagement of local communities in Morocco. We haven't had a Moroccan project yet. Based on EOCA's funding priorities, what would you recommend I focus on to ensure the project's competitive, particularly regarding community involvement, measurable outcomes, and outdoor sector relevance? That's really tricky without knowing what your project is actually going to do.
Or your location. I've never been to Morocco, I'm afraid, and don't know the area. So it's hard for us to actually specifically say. We do have such a wide variety of project application. It's one of the great things about reading through projects.
But if your application actually touches on all those points in your message there, then it sounds like it would be a really good project. Okay, the Mukti Foundation, Bangladesh. Hello, we work in the southern part of Bangladesh. Would you funding for biodiversity of Sundarban and Bay of Bengal of Bangladesh? Yes, we would absolutely consider that area for funding.
Okay, another one asking for it to be passed on to an email. Remember, this will be up on our website at the Apply for Funding page for you to download yourselves. Okay, and then we've got one from Seeds. We are working in a natural lagoon. That's fine. Dedan, how many of the applications were approved? So each funding round, we get around 200 applications, and then we're able to fund 5 or 6 of those.
Would clearing up a habitat with endemic species be eligible as a project? Yes. When you say clearing up, do you mean
for, I presume, rather than with?
So if you're talking about removing litter and rubbish and single-use plastic, yes, absolutely.
Yep. Or removing invasive species.
Yes, yep. Yes, that also works.
Okay. Michael from Cameroon, working with an NGO, can we send in a proposal on the Atlantic coastal of marine biodiversity conservation? Yes, that sounds fine.
Does funding support reclamation of degraded mangrove forests for the conservation and restoration of endangered species? Yes, absolutely.
Hasta, could we implement this project in community forest where most of the community people will engage? Yes.
Has EOCA supported projects in Africa? Yes.
Yes, you'll be able to see them on our website on the project page. We have funded quite a few in Africa in the past.
Mohammed, can I apply for funding individually? No, please use your institute as long as it's non-profit.
Hasta, is there any possibility where at least one NGO is selected from each country? No. Sorry.
Each project stands on its own merit. So if they happen to all fit in Africa, then that's where the project funding will go.
Yep. Susanna from Mexico. Personally, at the moment, I am carrying out a project and receive funding individually. Would it be negative for the application if my NGO had no history, but I as a person had it? We do get this question quite a lot when you're a new NGO. So yes, what we tend to ask there is that you get references for the people within the NGO, such as yourself. So a character reference for yourself, character reference for somebody else that's also going to be working on the project in order to help that NGO with the application process.
Shanitha from Wild Trust in South Africa, could the education of youth about rhino conservation work as the hands-on requirement? No, education is not hands-on, but education as part of doing something else hands-on, such as some anti-poaching work, for instance, that would absolutely be fine.
Okay, and I think the next one is Susanna, we've answered that. Mohammed, in university case, how can I apply? You can apply as a university. Just try to give us a bit more information about what your department does. Try and give us a bit more background. You can always attach an extra document which tells us about what your department has done, is doing. And if you have any specific websites that you can point us to, not the general website of the university, that would really help.
Do the recommendation letters need to specify a financial contribution to the project, or is it sufficient if the support was intellectual, for example, assisting in project development? It doesn't have to specify a financial contribution. Somebody that has worked with you, whether as a funder or as part of another project side by side. So somebody that knows your organisation and its work and can recommend to us that what you're doing is good stuff.
So does EOCA fund tree species conservation within agro-ecosystems? Yes, we do. The main part of the project still needs to be conservation action, but we have funded and will fund agro-ecosystems.
Oh, Yuri, we've only got half of your question there. Am I eligible with a project? And I don't know what the rest of the question is. And then Irene, something about El Salvador, but
again, it's not coming up.
Has it been copied and pasted or somehow rather than typed in? But we can only see the first few words. Josephine, hello. From Kenya, can we involve students in hands-on conservation? Yes. Do you consider representation of women, adolescents and PLWDs when considering proposals? Absolutely. If you're involving them in your work, yes, please.
Hasta, how many NGOs will be selected? So 200 applications roughly each funding round, can be more, and we fund 5 to 6 projects. Can we only use
pictures in the application if we can't afford videos? Yep. Yes, absolutely, that's totally fine.
Yep.
Hi, Ben from Uganda.
I missed out this response, please.
Ben, we can't. Oh, hang on.
Is there a provision of Google Doc form that gives space for just filling? Secondly, an entity working with custodians communities in line with conservation, is it allowed to apply? So firstly, the Google Doc form, our form is a Microsoft Word form that you download. I do know that in some forms it won't come through properly if you don't have Word. So for example, if you've got Pages, so long as the application comes back with all our questions intact, it doesn't matter if the layout has gone a bit odd and isn't quite right. That doesn't matter. So long as you have answered all the questions, sent in all the documentation, that is fine. An entity working with custodians communities in line with conservation. Yes.
As long as you're a registered non-profit, NGO. Yes.
Yeah.
We've answered the one about project starting immediately after. We've answered about sharing a PowerPoint. Since ecosystem restoration often requires oh no, we've had that. We've gone back down to 34. Can you go down?
Oh, we were right down the bottom,
yeah,
weren't we?
Yeah.
Hang on. Let's see if we can find back where we are. Done that one.
Shanitha, we've had her. Keep going, keep going. Legalising NGO. She said thank you. Keep going.
That's it.
Oh,
why is it still saying new messages?
Oh, there we go.
Oh, it was because we'd opened that one. Sorry.
Is it
technology?
Is it possible to encourage advocacy on timber species as part of an organisation? Yes, if there's a specific type of tree that is very important to the area, maybe for specific wildlife, yes. Yes, you can.
Right. Somebody's asking about funding environmental DNA projects. We haven't had one.
Well, yes.
It all depends on what you're wanting to do.
If it's all research, then unfortunately not.
Yeah. But if it is involving conservation action, then yes, you can always send us a brief paragraph outline.
Yes.
To check if you want.
We can have a look. We've done that one. Recording, yes. Have you ever funded a project in Lesotho? No. Several in Africa, but not there specifically. How many projects funded per call? As we said, 5 or 6. How much is the rejection rate? Unfortunately, quite a lot because we get around 200 applications. Budget template? No, there isn't one. You can do it yourself. Oh, right. I think we're going to have to just start the wind up.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I think we've answered everything in the chat, actually.
We now need to go and lie down in the darkened room.
If you think there's anything that we haven't answered and we've missed, please do email us and we will endeavour to get back to it as and when we can.
Yes, this Shea Nut Foundation, Fight Destruction.
Yes, that sounds fine like for the Shea Nut
project. Right, we are going to finish now. Thank you all so much for your time and for staying to the bitter end, over 100 of you. Thank you again for taking part, and we will get this up online as soon as we possibly can, so that anybody that wasn't able to see it can have a look, or if you wanted to go back over various points, you can have a look at it again. Thank you so much, everybody. If we've missed anything, send us an email, and it's been brilliant for you all to take part.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Just end when.